Today's topic would be about the poverty spectrum. TEDx Port Harcourt 2020 theme of which is Light Bearer, talking about hope and despair. Hope and despair in light of the pandemic. I have Chinedu Amah, who likes to be described as a Nigerian. He's a TEDx speaker. He also curated a selling event for TEDx Port Harcourt themed Reconnect. He's a linguistics graduate. Your forte right now is renewable energy.
Renewable energy.
Clean energy.
Clean energy. We understand that we've suffered a perennial power supply problem in Nigeria, and we also believe that as long as this power supply problem continues, we will continue to be unable to reach our expectations, our goals as a nation. So yes, we think renewable energy is a solution. Yes, we believe that using that, either sun, biogas, or even natural gas, as the case may be, we should be able to improve the lives of our people, from our communities to our cities.
Clean energy, renewable energy. I have Donald Okudu, who is the primary licensee for TEDx Port Harcourt. On this third community curation session, we're going to be discussing the poverty spectrum. I would like for you to start with a little expose on our theme for the year's event, Light Bearer.
The Light Bearer for 2020, it's an exploration of the interconnectivity between despair and hope. But at the same time too, from the onset of the TEDx Port Harcourt brand, we've also seen it as a priority to ensure that we can either shed light on existing problems and also look for the best answers to actually cater to those questions that have been raised, because we believe a properly framed question is just as important as the answers that you get from it. And looking at it from the light bearer perspective also, the light bearer is the one who sheds light in those dark corners, especially in areas where people are not asking the right questions about. So this presents an opportunity, and also it also provides an opportunity for the enlightened ones, which are also light bearers, to also find solutions to the problems that have been identified, to be able to solve them. So I think that pretty much summarizes. So we are also trying to make sure that for every time we get to discuss the theme for the year, we're able to show how multifaceted the theme is for the year. So even though it's a conversation around despair and hope, we're also trying to show in other directions that the talk can actually lean towards. And that pretty much explains why we're having this conversation. And on the community curation, these are conversations that build into the main event. So if there are conversations in the main event that covers areas like this is just to be able to provide more context to a much larger conversation.
The World Bank defines poverty as: poverty is hunger, poverty is a lack of shelter, poverty is being sick and not being able to see a doctor, poverty is not being able to go to school, not knowing how to read, not being able to speak properly. Poverty is not having a job. Poverty is the fear of the future. Poverty is living one day at a time, as we say, from hand to mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Poverty is losing a child to illnesses brought about by issues like unclean water. Poverty is powerlessness, is a lack of representation and freedom. Weaponizing poverty is what I would like you to talk about. Is it something that you agree to? Is it
poverty can be weaponized. Poverty is weaponized. Poverty is used against people locally in Nigeria, within a region, within a state, at a national level. Poverty is weaponized internationally because the man who is better advantaged than you are understands that you do not know, understands that you lack. And having that perspective on your situation, the person takes advantage of that reality. What's his name? Patrick Okigba, I saw a video, an interview from a few days ago that he shared, and he talked about why the guy who wants to run for an election will give you 1,000 naira, and why the person who's been given 1,000 naira or 5,000 naira will take it. You know why? Because the person's child may be at home, headache, no money for Panadol, and that 1,000 naira might just be what will save that child. So he
solves his immediate problem.
Yes, so he takes the 1,000 naira
day at a time,
irrespective of what his conscience tells him. Because at this point, let's not go too far. A cup of coffee in Port Harcourt is about 1,500 or 2,000 naira, depending on the coffee shop you go to. Now,
our coffee shops are bougie.
No. When they go somewhere now, so that your coffee cup, how much is $1 in naira? Let's just say 400 naira. So it will take the average Nigerian 4 days of chow, because we know that our own they below $1. So 4 days of one guy chow for Nigeria, 400 naira is what you and I can afford to go.
Because poverty had been also described as, poverty index, living below $1 a day.
Yes.
So this is 4 days.
Exactly. So when that guy has 4 days, me and you drink somebody's 4 days of life because we can afford it. Then if you and I or our peers want to run for office, it becomes a standard calculation that we can actually acquire this man's conscience for half a cup of coffee, for one meat pie,
for a quarter.
Do you understand? So we use the lack that the man has. I'm saying we now because we are getting into the generation where we have friends in public offices. We have peers in public offices. So every day in Nigeria, we take advantage of the fact that the next man does not have to force our position on that man.
So his lack,
yes,
is perhaps directly proportional to his mental capability. So it becomes poor in his mind. So we can use it to our own advantage. These people who are weaponizing poverty, using it to their advantage, are they in the position to be able to reverse it? If it's two ways, if we're saying so it sounds like they're deliberately leaving people in poverty, so that
in a impoverished situation, so they can be
used
as tools.
Can they do the other? Can they get them out of poverty?
Did
they put them in that state? Can they bring them out of that
There's
state?
an Igbo adage that says when you
are they just doing the only, at least I think the only route that they have.
There's an Igbo adage that says when you hold somebody on the ground, you also have yourself on the ground.
In a manner of speaking.
So if you and I are actually in physical combat, and I swing you and you drop on the ground, and I sit on you or I kneel on you, I cannot hold you down and stand up at the same time.
Correct.
Now, so the guy who is a politician, who is a public figure, who is an influence, who has a voice, who weaponizes poverty, fails to realize that even in himself or herself, he is poor. We have a literally recent example of someone who called young people drug addicts, but had a birthday party, and we saw cartons that clearly read palliatives as souvenirs. Now, do you know how mentally bereft, morally bereft you have to be to use a carton of noodles as 3,500 naira as souvenirs? Noodles given to you to give to the poor man within your constituency. Now, the poor man within your constituency is definitely not going to be a guest at your birthday.
Word.
So you've literally taken you take pride in stealing 3,500 naira across 1,000 people. Now, back to your question where you asked, do I think these people can do otherwise? They cannot do otherwise because they are coming from a historically, mentally poor place. You're talking about a system that has gone bad for over 30 years. Now, the current crop of leadership that you have cannot give what they do not have because historically they have been poor mentally, poor morally. So now, in fact, let's even take it a step further. The reason why we've had a high level of emigration is because we've run a society that is not run on merit. So the people who believe in merit, who had the will and the way, left Nigeria. The ones who did not understand merit stayed back. Over 90% of our politicians are who they are today because they ran via weaponized poverty. Some of them will tell you, make a rich day, then I go do what you're supposed to do.
So they're running from the country, Nigeria, which, I mean, only recently have we been tagged as the poverty capital.
Yeah.
So before we were even tagged, we had been hitting certain marks. We had been fulfilling certain KPIs
Yes.
of being poor.
Yes.
Because the same World Bank at some point described poverty as a situation people want to escape.
Yes.
People have been escaping from Nigeria.
Yes.
For the longest time.
Yes.
So this poverty, so we being the poverty capital of the world it goes without saying.
It's an endorsement of our reality.
I mean, it's foray into our educational system. One of those definitions that I read is poverty is not being able to go to school, not knowing how to read, not being able to write. So smack in the center of our educational system, primary school, there's malpractice. Following the current situation in the country with all the protests, enough is enough, and SARS, and bad governance in Nigeria, and police brutality. Right after there was the purported massacre in Lagos, certain places, actually around the country. It wasn't that's the remarkable one, because I mean it was caught live on camera.
Yeah.
There was a looting that happened afterwards, and the news that went around was that protesters were looting. The example of taking palliatives meant for the less privileged and giving to somebody who's having a grand party. These people who need that thing will not be there. So these people who have gone and perpetrated this loot, it's arguable that there may be the protest, because the protest was across Nigeria, across classes of people, whether you're out there on the street or you're behind your keypad. I mean, does it reflect the state of our educational system?
Yes, it does. I got out of school in university in 2004, 2005. About the period, or like a few years before us, it had become commonplace for the guy who studied microbiology to be a banker, right? So what has happened is that you've had that dearth of knowledge and capacity over time, so much that we began to assume that being a doctor or being a lawyer, or what's the other profession?
The other. Is there just one more?
No, there are three standards now. You're either a doctor, a lawyer, or
an engineer.
An engineer. Those became the standards for Nigerian parents at the time.
Everything else suffered.
I don't know if that's changed a whole lot.
And no, today now, I can't know how your son can play ball now. Whiskey, they can sing. But what has happened is that
I like when we want to see these people at the time of success.
Everybody likes the meal when it's done. Nobody wants to see the process. Now, that lack of education, for some reason, our society began to brush aside certain skill sets.
Why so?
I can't say social problems. Because it's assumed that if you are not a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, you cannot earn a good salary. Thus, if you want to go and be a musician, the first they will tell you, hunger will kill you, you go marry soon. So the quest that you had to be this to be successful became a norm. So much so that, let me give you.
So it seems like it was basically all about survival.
Yes.
If you study something that we're more familiar with, perhaps accounting and economics and architecture,
my brother, why would
you are more likely to to survive in this
why do you
society than
think
if you study linguistics?
Our parents in the 80s and 90s, I want to study linguistics. In fact, for me at the time,
did you want to study linguistics?
Me, who care? Did I care? Just get me to a course in university.
Okay,
I wanted to study music and business administration, business management.
Music and
business management.
There was no school in Nigeria.
I wanted to go to Berkeley College of Music.
Interesting.
And each time I mentioned, everybody will laugh. Like, you never start. Do you get? So, because until the two faces of this world started making bread, no parent in Nigeria at the time would encourage you to be a musician.
I don't know if in present day they will still encourage you to be musicians. Perhaps it's still the same educational system thing. We don't have schools like Juliet, not a school of music. We don't have anything that is a fraction of things like that here.
Very true.
In the same way, the technical schools have not been given that juice. So they are there, and the people say, there's no point going to school to go study for 5 years and then come out and decide that I want to be a chef. But there's that Nigerian thing where it's also part of your defense and your argument. If you are put down in any way, you say, listen, I'm a graduate, don't speak to me that way. I'm not sure what these things mean anymore.
Is it enough to be a graduate when we know that, number one, you probably didn't even write your way into the university? Number two,
they probably did, but they just did it to pass exams.
Hold on now. Number two, you probably didn't even write your way through the university. Now, when you have all of that, and then don't forget that over time, because of the rot in our society, it wasn't just a status thing, but the public institutions became near incapable of training children, preparing them. Thus, the private schools became the thing. Thus,
private institutions
became the thing.
It's public institutions.
So much so that by the time people like me were getting into university, the Covenants and the Babcocks of this world were coming to be, and today everybody sees them as the university of choice to attend, because our public institutions, I mean, children haven't been in school for 8 months this year. ASU has been on strike.
Pandemic.
Then the pandemic joined as well. And
ASU on strike before
they've been out of school for I don't know how many months for pandemic, but this morning I heard
when you said children, you meant
undergraduates now, senior dentists.
I would like for you to not refer to them as children.
Don't be annoyed. Don't be annoyed. Context different. That guy already vexed.
Yes.
Right. But now, when you talk about looters and level of education and knowledge, right, and how that has affected or how that motivated the looting that occurred following what do you call it again, the massacre? Yes,
the disbandment of the protests.
Now,
nationwide.
Where I want to take it from is that a historical systemic problem made a large number of our people, it impoverished a large number of our people. And in that state, that situation, anything became an option, including risking it all for noodles.
Across Nigeria, everybody goes to university. Even people that have gone to technical school and perhaps have written their city and guild. And I mean, it's hot cake around the world.
Yeah.
We now have, I think it's called NAPTIP, something like that.
Yeah.
After they've done this, actually, they're equipped for life. When Nigerian society now, they would have to go to universities to go and get bachelor's degrees right after that. And like what you said, just let me get into school and do this thing. So these people who we want to call looters, they're me and you.
I know.
Perhaps me and you did not risk our lives and our physical, to put ourselves in danger, as it were, to jump into these warehouses and loot. But I don't know.
Because once again,
if it reflects our educational system.
Yes, because see, with each passing year, our numbers got worse. Job creation, employability, the capacity of your organizations to thrive and sustain as companies reduced. And as they reduced, it meant more people were chasing fewer jobs. In Port Harcourt alone, how many companies exited Transamadi in the space of 20 years? The big employers of labor. And as they exited, it wasn't just them, don't forget, because they had smaller companies who were supporting them.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a misconception that the job of the government has a primary function of employing labor. The government's primary function is creating the right policies for the private sector to thrive and employ labor. Now, hold on. Now, as we lost it, right, our communities, the same way in the cities, there was a mass exodus towards Canada, towards London, towards US. Our communities also had the mass exodus into the city. Even if
urban migration.
Even if there was nothing for them.
If we go by the definition of poverty, many of us we're struggling.
Bros, we are, you and I, or maybe not you, but a lot of us in this space are one sickness away from poverty in Nigeria. In fact, we see it every day now. GoFundMe. Because, bros, we don't have the medical system to sustain us as a people. With poverty that has traveled generation to generation and illiteracy that has traveled across generations, let's not take something away from our society, which is the impact of religion, right? Because that illiteracy or ignorance or lack of knowledge has pushed a large number of our society from thinking or from understanding the roles and responsibilities of their government towards them as a people. For example, because you now turn to the spiritual as a solution for your problem, rather than pressure your government for your expectations with respect to Medicare, you take it to God in prayer.
To heal your land.
Due to a lack of trust in the system.
No, at that point itself, you don't even realize anymore that it's the work of your government.
And this was ignorance of the other solution.
No, that is what historical illiteracy has led us to. Because we do not even understand our role in our communities as citizens. If you had a society that provided power, that's the baseline. Because with adequate power supply, not just to turn on the light, but to function, for your factories to function. If Michelin, for example, was still functioning, you and I cannot imagine how many people would have still been working there by now. Let's assume you had 1,000 people working there. That is 1,000 families. If you also assume that each of those families have 4 children, that is close to how many thousand people who can be fed daily.
So there's a certain lack of information, education as it were.
Yes.
That is causing us, the people, to not make these demands as we should.
Yes.
To the society.
Because we do not know our place in the society.
So between the educated, less educated, and more educated, there's that information gap. And we've established that politicians have taken advantage of this gap and have used it to perhaps, or obviously, influence electoral processes. How would education, how do we go about this education? I mean, there's poverty, you've thrown illiteracy, you've said historical illiteracy, you've said political illiteracy. There's, illiteracy, the inability to read and write, the lack of knowledge. You know, we also described it before as the inability to unlearn and relearn. So there's functional illiteracy, which now is the inability to use your knowledge of reading and writing properly, especially in regards to community development. So perhaps we are literate in the sense that we can read and write and we have all this knowledge, but we have been unable to use them. So this political illiteracy is some form of functional illiteracy.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So how do we? Did Nigerians want to jump on this protest as 2023? 2023 is far. As
it's not.
How do we fill this information gap for 2023 elections? If we're talking of end bad governance in Nigeria, what do people need to know? I don't know a whole lot about political strategies. If we're going to channel our energies today and try to maintain it and head towards trying to change bad governance in Nigeria, how do we plug these information gaps? I'm sure there are different offices that would have the orientation agencies, but it's still the government.
It will not do it for you.
Yes, okay, I know that. I mean, talking of education and the lack of it,
yes,
and we're screaming for the police, and some people say it's because they are far less paid. That's why these things happen. If they're educated more, these people that we like to, because we like to think that the police is just another set of people. It's just they're amongst us. We have relatives that are in the police force. Some of them they have degrees like us. How they do their jobs, what cadre they are in, what units they join.
There's also the notion that the Nigerian police is underfunded.
To a large extent.
To a large extent. Are there other conditions that have led to them not being as functional as they ought to be?
Expectations, reality. How do we keep this vibe for 2023? It is not the National Orientation Agency's place to do it.
I wasn't suggesting it was.
I know, because the government will not do it for you. A man cannot give what he does not have. Now, if you do not understand that you have to be a responsible citizen, part of which is, first of all, that when you start, you must, once you're 18, you must go get your voter's card. And then you also speak to the next man to say, oh boy, that your cousin, how old is he or she? Have they registered to vote? We must start between today and 2023 elections, which is February what? You would have 2 sets of between 16 and 18-year-olds who get into the university. Across Nigeria, in those 2 years, you probably have another about 200,000 people who are eligible voters or more. And
I think
in all of my
every day somebody tells
and in all of my years as a Nigerian, I've literally never seen one political party go to start sensitizing people who just got into university. It is not for you to ask who should teach me. In our society, we have a wide array of learning points.
Well, are we absolving the government of their responsibility?
They have a responsibility.
They have a responsibility.
In as much as me and you, like we're trying to.
So why do I have to also remind you of your responsibility, the oath you took to service?
Remember where we started from. We said, is this weaponized poverty? So if the man who has weaponized poverty against the society has a responsibility of educating the society to stand up against him. Do you then expect him to come and educate you so that you can stand up against him?
So now you said that, let me ask a question. Are we suggesting that educating people?
Yes.
Yes.
Notice the way I have put it.
Yes.
I did not say educating ourselves.
Yes.
Educating people.
People.
Yes.
Like we're doing it at this session.
Yes.
Our viewers are listening.
Yes.
We're doing back and forth.
Yes.
So how? We're trying to educate people, also educating them to know that they should educate themselves.
Exactly. Then also realize that aside to government, we have a ton of influential individuals who function in institutions, who owe the society a responsibility to be what? The library, yes?
In conclusion, because we're out of time.
Yeah.
What are these points that we have made with regards to this poverty spectrum that we find ourselves, poverty of the pocket, poverty of the mind? We are saying people should get educated, whether it's structured learning in the classroom, formal, informal. We are saying that the education, the responsibility for people to get educated lies between ourselves and we to educate ourselves. For we that know that we do not know, and know that we need to know. And those people who all they care for is today's meal. Our responsibility as perhaps people who know more, perhaps the more educated ones, to educate these people.
We need to know our place and understand our rights in every space. Secondly, we need to further engage one another, whether in church groups, in hangout groups, in exercise groups,
Social
in business circles, right? We need to engage better, encourage and drive each other better. Because I'll tell you for free, I'm an advocate for the alternate economy. The economy that does not depend on the government solely to thrive. The economy that does not thrive on contractorship. The economy that thrives on entrepreneurship. Because you see a void, a space, a problem in your society. Thus, you're building yourself as a business to go close that gap. Because it is only in closing that gap that you create value for your community. Thus, if we can, collectively, in our small spaces, build the alternate economy, pay stacks of this world, the ride-sharing guys of this world, whoever brought them to Nigeria and the new ones springing up, because those spaces exist. Because Nigeria, as big as it is, 10,000 cows consume the Lagos every day. Not one standard meat processing factory in the entire country. So many spaces to be filled, too many people chasing the cluttered space. So we educate, let people understand what it means to do business. Because when you free up people, you employ more people. Educate, engage, and then we can start to hold our governments responsible.
And find our way out of poverty. Thank you very much. I think we can draw the curtain at this point, because if we keep going, we can do this till midnight.
Nigeria problem plenty.
So thank you, our viewers.